Right. This is the T-shirt that I wore when in labour with Perry. This belongs to my partner. It makes me think of some pictures that we took of when I was at the early stages of the labour, and I'm sat on a birthing ball. I'm wearing this T-shirt, and in that picture, I just look really calm and happy. Then there's a flip side to that picture, because there's an element of me that wants to give that woman a big massive hug in that picture, because she has no idea of what is about, what is about to happen to her, the events that are going to unfold. And I feel really sad for her, because she is so positive, and I just think, you're a fool, just sitting there bouncing on your ball, you have no idea.
I think it's still on my mind quite frequently. It tends to be in the evening when I'm putting her to bed, when we're quiet and she's just in my arms and quiet. Then it tends to be then that I think about how much I wanted her and where she came from and what I wanted around the birth and what I actually got and how different those two things were, I guess. This brings to mind more than I would like and more often than I expected.
It's really frustrating when you know how birth could be to see how we've messed it up. Somehow, feminists have been militant about abortion, but they've never been militant in the same way about childbirth. And whether that's because once you've had the baby and you're happy with the child and you're so busy looking after the baby that you're not going to go out marching the streets at that time. So you don't have a cohort of women who are shouting about what's wrong with childbirth. I don't know if that's the reason, but it is crazy that women outnumber obstetricians so much, and yet they don't seem to be able to get the kind of births that they want.
I think part of it was that I was induced, and I was induced earlier than they would do normally, and I knew all about induction. My background is medical, and I blamed the whole thing on being induced and lack of control and lack of discussion. And I didn't put my foot down enough to say, no, I want to speak to the doctor, I want to discuss this, risks, benefits, and they just said no. They just said no, right on the bed. Come on, this is what we're doing. And I'm going to stand up for myself a bit more, I think.
For me, it was something around being violated, this kind of the sameness of feeling through your birth experience, being violated, and the shock of that, that can actually happen. So that was the experience of when I had my first baby, and it was a section, and there's seemingly dozens of people in the room with me, each doing something to my body, and not knowing their names or anything about them, and just feeling totally disempowered and scared and violated.
Well, I mean, there can be traumatic deliveries in a physical sense, so there's that kind of traumatic delivery, and then there's the psychological traumatic delivery, which I think does centre on the woman feeling that she wasn't able to do what she thought was the right thing, that her wishes have been overruled, and if that is compounded by a sort of dismissive attitude by the midwife or the doctor, that can really strike at the heart of her self and her feelings of self-confidence and self-worth. So I think it is quite a serious problem, unfortunately.
This piece, the idea now is that this side will represent midwife. So she's got a totally calm, totally reassuring, just all-encompassing, positive feeling that she's able to influence the whole environment with. That's the sort of impression that I would like to give, because I think if people are relaxed, then everything will happen much more naturally. So on this side, I'm going to put very positive images. Right, this dad, that's what he's envisaging will happen. There's a woman using a beanbag and she's got a heat pad on her back. She's at home with the fireplace. Just maybe what people imagine or hope for, or that's the very best that they could get when they're in labour.
This was a midwife or...
Oh, I did that.
You did? Okay. Oh, you did? Okay. This presumably could mean the woman in labour. She's supposed to be singing or in pain or...
On Labour Suite, if I've got more than a couple of women, I find really hard, because you're doing your obs every 15 minutes. So you're running from... By the time you've done your obs and written them up for one lady, you've got to run next door and do it for them. You write that up and then you're just constantly that. Yeah. And I hate that. I've got 8 women on the antenatal ward and 1 CTG, you know, and if you've got to sit there and hold it on because a baby's very active, that's 9 other women or 8 other women that you're not really sure what's happening. I feel furious. I feel really angry about having to do that.
It's very frustrating when you can't do what you know you need to do for someone, because people only have an opportunity once, twice, a handful of times in their lives to have a good birth. So it's just such a shame if it isn't as good as it could have been.
After Changing Childbirth, that report came out, that emphasised the importance of midwives and giving midwives autonomy so that women could have the kind of births they wanted. Somehow, very few midwifery units actually empowered their midwives to do that, and they just regimented the whole thing, you know, and that's a real loss, I think, to society.
This is a picture which I drew as a celebration of life. Monday's like a family gathering and friends and everybody celebrating, but then it's more blurred because I think nowadays a lot of people sort of see it as more of a medical condition, and there's a lot of tension, fear. I think it should be celebrated more and make it more special, and it should be a celebration of life. It should be a nice, positive picture, but it is all blurred because we can't see it.